Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified here on Ickonic.com. Today I want to talk about your digital twins. Now we covered this briefly in trending, but this is really important and it deserves a lot more time spent on it. This also applies to fait accompli, basically that this is being done and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, Elon Musk's going on about that we must merge with machine to beat AI because it's already outthinking us and you stupid humans and all of that stuff. This is kind of like the prophecies of technology. All these prophecies are bound to come about. Never mind that humans are actually making them come about. This is what they want you to believe, that it's already written. It's written in stone. It's already done. And there's nothing you can do about it except comply. Resistance is futile. This is what the message is, that this technology is already going to be part of. So I want to have a look at this and track it through, how they're trying to best make you give up before you start fighting back. It's total nonsense. Again, we are talking about a cult here. And the technology part of it is what they would say is the ripened fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Christopher John Biertnis goes into that in his videos he was on last week, and he'll be back in a couple of weeks to give you more information and proof on his Garden of Eden in the North Pole theory. This is what they're doing. They feel like the technology has ripened and they are ready now for their human 2.0. And it's mad. But let's start with digital twins. Now, what is really interesting about this is this was a question asked to ChatGPT. So we were asking the technology itself to give us an answer about itself. So this would have been programmed into the technology. They're trying to convince you that it's thinking for itself, but it's only reacting on any information that's put in. And we know with the likes of the digital ID and all of these kind of CIA asset-affiliated systems that work through social media, Palantir being one, that all the information that you're putting on the internet is going to be fed into this to try and read you. It's a cybernetic system, which is the study of systems complete. So this says basically what ChatGPT thinks when it comes to your digital twin. Now, this is your meta being that wanders around this fake planet within the computer. Your digital twin refers to your virtual representation or model of yourself, built using data from various sources, Palantir, such as your physical characteristics, behaviours, preferences, Palantir again, activities, and potentially even thoughts. So here we go with the Think Thought Police. It's a dynamic, evolving simulation. It's only evolving because you're feeding it. That mirrors your real world attributes and actions. It mirrors. It's the flip. It's the reverse. It's the inversion. Digital twins are used in various industries, but when applied to individuals, they can be highly personal and detailed, and a bit creepy, quite frankly. So, the key features, and remember this is ChatGPT itself answering these questions. So this is what it believes of itself, if it understands what self is, which I doubt it. But you know what I mean. The rest of it, the blanks in it, like an mRNA code, can be filled in with your mind. Just make it up. Key features of a digital twin. Data-driven. A digital twin is created from continuous data streams, social media, the internet. This can include biometric data, online behaviour, there you go, or interactions with technology. Everything is building up your profile, Palantir profile, your digital ID. They're telling you. Simulation. It can predict your behaviour. So this is your pre-crime. This is you're likely, if we calculate all of these things you've done in your life, to commit this crime. And we just had today that young boy, I believe, that horrifically killed those children in the UK. The front papers banging on about the fact that he bought a knife from Amazon. Now, on the surface, that's ridiculous. It doesn't matter where he gets the knife from. And, of course, it's just horrific. But they'll use these things. So the implication of that would be that your online purchases will be tracked, and it's naughty if you're seen buying. You will get questioned on why you want to buy a knife from Amazon. Maybe you just want to eat your fish fingers. You know, they're going to question you on everything. So It can predict your behaviour, make decisions based on your preferences, or even automate tasks for you. Adaption. Over time, as more data is gathered, it becomes more accurate in reflecting and predicting your real-life actions. So what it will do is you're a nod, land of nod, in this system now, which includes the technology. But who's programming this ChatGPT? We are. But who's deciding on the morals of it? They are. Who might own or control your digital twin? Now, this is really important. You, in theory, so not you then, ideally, not then, as the subject of the digital twin, you should have control and ownership over your data, how your data is collected, but you don't, and you already don't, used, and you never did, and shared. However, this isn't always the case in practice. Of course, it's not always the case in practice, because it was never supposed to be the case in practice. Corporations and developers. Companies that create digital twin platforms may hold significant control over the digital twin if it's based on data collected from the services you use. Now, what's really important about this bit is they don't need to put you physically in prison. I brought this up with Gaz on Trending, I believe. They can just lock your digital twin out of the system, and you're not going to be able to get hold of your money. You're not going to be able to travel in smart cars. You're not going to be able to leave the city with your digital ID. They can lock your digital being out of the system and put it in Facebook prison for 6 months. And it doesn't really matter if you're physically in prison or not, because you're locked out of the system. That's exactly what that, I say, will lead to if you allow these lunatics to go at it. Governments. In some instances, regulations might give governments access. They've got access already. They are funding the venture capital firms and all of these lunatics that work for intelligence. They just tell you what they've already done, not what could be done. And this is the crux of what I want to talk about today, really, behind just the technology. Is it fait accompli? Remember, whoever was putting this into ChatGPT was asking if it thought it was just a done deal. ChatGPT answered, yes. It seems that the creation of digital twins and the tracking mechanism behind them, like the widespread use of cookies, has indeed become a fait accompli. No, it isn't. We just don't use it. Or an irreversible reality. Whether we consent or not, the infrastructure for creating digital replicas of individuals based on their data is deeply entrenched in the digital ecosystem. So if we don't use the digital ecosystem, then it's not fait accompli, is it? So this is nonsense. But again, this is ChatGPT has been told that it's basically indestructible and a god. What makes it fait accompli? Pervasive data collection. Yeah, that's not a good thing. The continuous and ubiquitous nature of data collection from cookies, social media interactions, location tracking and other digital breadcrumbs means that a vast amount of data about each individual is already being harvested. Harvested is probably the word. Who else does the harvest? The Grim Reaper. Once the data is collected, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to reverse its use or ownership. I could go through all of that. I'll put it up on the screen so you can pause it and read through it yourself. But, you know, breadcrumbs, Hansel and Gretel, straight into the witch's house. This is exactly what they're doing. They understand human psychology, but this is a computer. It's a toaster telling you that the toaster's going to take over and there's nothing you can do about it. So these are some of the guys behind it that you might not have heard of. We've all heard of the Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musks of the world that are just like the poster boys, really. But these guys you very rarely hear of. This is a year old now, but it says rise of artificial intelligence is inevitable. Here we go again. But should not be feared, father of AI says. It's inevitable. But don't fear it. Join in with it. Stick it in your body. Jürgen Schmidhuber, they all sound a bit like that, don't they? Schwab believes AI will progress to the point where it surpasses human intelligence and will pay no attention to people. I mean, it's so silly. It's the whole kind of, the prophecy is written and you're a born sinner and stupid. The technology, your toaster is smarter than you. Utter nonsense, but let's carry on. So this fella is said to be the father of AI. God, then, I suppose. Techno-god. The man, once described as the father of artificial intelligence, is breaking ranks with many of his contemporaries who are fearful of the AI arms race, saying what is coming is inevitable and we should learn to embrace it. How about no? This is resistance is futile, isn't it? Professor Jürgen Schmidhuber's work on neural networks in the 1990s was developed into language processing models that went on to be used in technologies such as Google Translate. Of course it did, DARPA. And Apple Siri, Apple taking the bite out of the apple, the knowledge of good and evil. The knowledge is apparently ripe now. The New York Times in 2016 said, when AI matures, it might call Schmidhuber Dad. That maturity has arrived, and while some AI pioneers are looking upon their creations in horror, oh bloody hell, what we made. This is Frankenstein's monster. Calling for a handbrake on the acceleration and proliferation of technology, Schmidhuber says that those calls are misguided. Now, later on, we will get to the fact that it's not just those calling against it. They're actually controlling both narratives, and it's really interesting how they do this, but they always do it. They'll always control both positive and negative sides. The German computer scientist says there is competition between governments, universities, and companies, all seeking to advance the technology, meaning there is now an arms race, whether humanity likes it or not. They're outwardly talking about it being a weapon, an arms race. And it'll be basically their technology against us. You cannot stop it, says Schmidhuber. Resistance is futile. Who is now the director of the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, AI's initiative in Saudi Arabia. Remember, Elon Musk has spent a lot of time over in Saudi Arabia and Qatar with the likes of Jared Kushner, who's a Chabadnik, these messianic lunatics, talking about this stuff. So this is where it's coming from. The places the very top, Saudi Arabia is not against Israel. They are one and the same. Surely not on an international level, because one country may have really different goals from another country. Oh, that's not the case, is it? Because there's one cult controlling most of them. So, of course, they are not going to participate in some sort of moratorium. Well, not on the surface, but below the surface, that's been the case for a very, very long time. But then I think you also shouldn't stop it, he says, because in 95% of all cases, AI research is really about our old motto, which makes humans live longer and healthier and easier, longer, again, immortal, androgynous, immortal human beings, which is what they believe the gods to be. That's where we're heading with it. This guy, Jürgen Schmidhuber's front and centre of that, but you probably have never heard of him. I hadn't until recently. Artificial General Intelligence is what he was working on. So Artificial General Intelligence, AGI, is a type of artificial intelligence that matches or surpasses human cognitive capabilities. How can that be possible? We all are contributing to that. So it's a culmination of all of our minds. This is the hive mind that they're creating, siphoning it off of people. But how can it be smarter than a human being if it's got to be judged, its smartness has got to be judged by some human beings? It doesn't make sense. It's completely lunacy, obviously. It's like I used to say about the IQ test. How do we know it wasn't some dumbass that created the IQ test? We just assumed that them people that put that together were clever. But, intelligence comes in all manner of forms. This contrasts with narrow AI, which is limited to specific tasks. Artificial superintelligence, on the other hand, refers to AGI that generally exceeds human cognitive capabilities. How would you know? AGI is considered one of the definitions of strong AI. This is what they're working on, but the whole message underneath this is the technology is smarter than you. You are stupid. There's nothing you can do about it. This is the message. So in 2014, Schmidhuber formed a company called NNAI Science. So NNAI Science, how you pronounce that, I have no idea. To work on commercial applications of artificial intelligence in fields such as finance, heavy industry, and self-driving cars. Of course it did. Sepp Hohrekerechter Jan Tallinn and Marcus Hutter are advisors to the company. So this was his company that he set up. Ultimately, it looks like it failed, but it has some interesting connections. So NAAI Science. So there's our website, still there, AI for the physical world. Basically, they're merging the two worlds. Remember what we talked about a few weeks back with the black cube and the white cube merging into one? So the cube of Nod, the black cube, cube of Saturn coming from the below, and coming from above would be the white cube of Zion, or the gold cube of Zion, and they would merge in together, which is why you get the Star of David, which you could easily put into this shape here on their website, because it's so above as below, seen on the Yakin and Boaz towers outside of all Freemasonic temples, and of course Solomon's temple. So this is Alma Mundi Ventures. Now, Alma Mundi Ventures were one of the very early funders of this company, NNAI Sense. So Alma Mundi Ventures, again with their logo up in the top corner, can be affiliated with that. So they funded one of the venture capital firms that funded this. Now, this is one of the guys, Xavier Santios, who's CEO and general partner of Mundi Ventures. He is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Could have told you that. I didn't need AI to tell you that. And founder of the Club Mundi, a plus 750 network of Spanish and foreign executives, both working abroad and in Spanish multi-internationals or foreigners linked in with Spain, Los Agronautas. Formerly has been also managing director of Telefonica, where he worked with the current chairman Jose Maria Alvarez Pellete, and set up the venture capital fund of funds Armigrio and 4M, I'm assuming that's million euros. Worked on Wayera, the startup accelerators nationwide, network-wide, and created Teletum, the hackers program. That sounded good, didn't it? What have you been doing? Doing a hackers program? Do you want to have a crack at AI? Hacking the human mind is basically what they're doing. So this is the CEO and general partner of Mundi Ventures, who funded NNAI Sense, and he is a World Economic Forum moron. See, this is where it gets really interesting. So you've got this kind of other side saying AI will take over, there's nothing you can do about it, just live with it. But it's a good thing. Don't worry about it, because it's good AI. This guy plays the other side of it, more the Elon Musk side of it, of be wary, join in. So this guy is going against Schmidhuber's stance on it, and he's contrasting here, but really he's just given another route to the same ending. So Schmidhuber's position contrasts with a number of his contemporaries, including Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, who spectacularly quit Google this week after a decade with the company in order to speak more freely on AI. They've sent out one of their guys, who is DARPA controlled, to give the alternative narrative that leads to the same conclusion. Hinton, who is referred to as the godfather of AI, so you've got the godfather of AI and the father of AI here. Or the dad. You've got Osiris and Horus. He won the Turing Award in 2018 for his work on deep learning, which is the foundation of much of the AI in use today. I would say this guy is far more ahead than Schmidhuber's. He said companies like Google had stopped being proper stewards for AI in the face of competition to advance the technology. He believes if AI becomes more intelligent than humans, same narrative again, AI will become more intelligent than humans. Humans are stupid. It will happen. It could be exploited by bad actors, including authoritarian leaders. Not Google, then. And obviously, I would suggest that he's still working for Google. So he's giving the more cautionary tale, like Elon Musk is that we need to watch it. It's still going to be smarter than humans. It's still going to be smarter than humans, but we need to watch it. So we need to basically make sure that even though you are not very bright, you merge with it or just do as it says. But whatever road you take, it's going to be smarter than you and take over. So this is the saying most people attribute to the Nazis. Resistance from ordinary people seemed futile, even suicidal. This was basically the whole saying behind it. Most Europeans did not dare fight their occupiers during World War II. They tried to learn to live with them. Again, live with AI. Don't resist it. Just to learn to live with it. If we cannot sing with the angels, we shall howl with the wolves, as a Czech journalist put it. Better the devil you know. This is the mentality of Elon Musk. This is the resistance is futile. Let's learn to live with them. But all the messaging from either side of these lot is technology is going to take over. This is the X Club. So what we have here, this guy Demis Hassabis, is another leading guy in AI, and he was involved with DeepMind as well. He's the co-founder of DeepMind by the looks of it. So this is the co-founder of DeepMind and the founder, apparently, of XAI. Now, this is how they position it and control both polarities. Remember the red and the blue, Shekinah and Yahweh. All polarities are controlled from the top. It's called triangulation, the X Club. So DeepMind position is a positive. It's progressive. That's the progressive movement, progressive in politics. Oh, we got to make new technology. We're progressing. We're transhuman. We're going to become the next human 2.0, and it's a progressive thing, and you should embrace it. We're improving upon ourselves. Again, the message is you're not good enough. And then you have on the other side the negative, which is conservative, which Elon Musk is plugging into literally at the moment, with the Republicans and going, nope, we're going to hold back, and we'll use it. But it could be dangerous, so we need to merge with it, but keep an eye on it. And it provides the narrative for both sides. So you get both sides of the political spectrum or the energetic spectrum there, controlled by these guys. Now, this is the X Club. This is exactly what the X Club was. So the X Club was born out of the Royal Society. The X Club was started by Thomas Huxley, so Julian and Aldous Huxley's grandfather, and they met before the Royal Society meetings each week, basically to give the orders on what would be on the card for that meeting that night. And they were transhumanists, but they called it eugenics back then. Transhumanism. That's the term that they use today. So you have the X Club, obviously used today by Elon Musk in terms of its connotations to the sigil of Saturn and the Freemasonic compass and square. The X Club and Saturn itself is XAI, it's X platform, and this is Elon Musk's contribution to the X Club. He is a eugenicist and transhumanist, and they all are. They're just playing both sides. This is eugenics. Outcome from all of these, as you see at the bottom, from both sides of the positive and negative, progressive and conservative, is AI takeover is inevitable. You can either join in or be crushed and left behind by it. That's basically the message. It's total nonsense. It's not inevitable, obviously. And this is the same thing with the prophecies and the Middle East and all of this. You were born a sinner. It's all to program you that it's already lost. The fight's already lost. So running amok. So this is a bit more about Demis Hassabis. It was just a friendly little argument about the fate of humanity. Demis Hassabis, a leading creator of advanced artificial intelligence, was chatting with Elon Musk. I doubt this actually ever happened. A leading doomsayer about the perils of artificial intelligence. No, he's not. He's giving you the soft sell, as David says. Hard sell, soft sell. He's just saying to you, it's going to take over, but we should merge with it. They are two of the most consequential and intriguing men in Silicon Valley who don't live there. Hassabis, a co-founder of the mysterious London laboratory DeepMind, had come to Musk's SpaceX rocket factory outside Los Angeles a few years ago, just popped along. They were in the canteen talking as a massive rocket part traversed overhead. That's just nonsense, isn't it? Fucking hell, I was eating me sandwich. What? Like, they always go overboard when they lie as well. Musk explained that his ultimate goal at SpaceX was the most important project in the world, interplanetary colonization. Hassabis replied that, in fact, he was working on the most important project in the world. They're all working on the same project. It's a messianic lunatic project. Developing artificial superintelligence. Musk countered that this was one reason we needed to colonize Mars. so that we'll have a bolt hole if AI goes rogue and turns on humanity. Now, I commented on this morning, actually, on Trending, that they're not worried about it, going rogue and going against humanity. Humans will be replaced with AI, and then they're worried that AI will go rogue and on them. That's what they're worried about, because they're not very bright. Amused, Hazabis said that AI would simply follow humans to Mars. Oh, these people. So he wants to colonize Mars as they did in Von Braun's book. Elon, the character, did. Took humans to Mars. It's all written there. Lots of Nazi connections. Do your own homework. This did nothing to soothe Musk's anxieties, even though he says there are scenarios where AI wouldn't follow. Total nonsense, total rubbish, and the background of that is AI is inevitable. Demis Hazzabis, so there's a bit of background about this fella. He's a British artificial intelligence AI researcher and entrepreneur, ain't they all? He is the chief executive officer and co-founder of Google DeepMind. You can see it. Google is DARPA. This is technology being used against you. And Isomorphic Labs, and a UK government AI advisor. In 2024, Hazzabis and John M. Jumper, great name, were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the AI research contributions for protein structure predictions again. But this is even more interesting. Hazzabis is a fellow of the Royal Society, so let's go back to that one again. The Royal Society is the X Club. The X Club gives the orders to the Royal Society. Hazzabis is in the Royal Society. And guess who else is in the Royal Society? 2018, Elon Musk was elected to the Royal Society. So both of these guys on that slide, giving you the negative and positive, the progressive and conservative take, are part of the Royal Society, which is the X Club and transhumanism and eugenics. And the outcome they both come to is AI will take over, and it's inevitable. Can you see how you're being hoodwinked into this stuff? This is Thomas Huxley, Aldous Huxley's grandfather. The X Club was a dining club of 9 men who supported the theories of natural selection. So he was called Darwin's bulldog. So this is a pushing forward of Darwin's theories. And academic liberalism in late 19th century England. Thomas Henry Huxley was the initiator of the X Club. He called the first meeting on the 3rd of November 1864. So you can read that and pause that if you want. But again, you're looking at the same lunatics here, the Royal Society of Lunatics, of transhumanists, of messianic transhumanists. And this whole transhumanist movement involving the technology fits into the messianic era, where they want androgynous robots, AI-controlled subhumans, that they will call Human 2.0, to be their slaves to this class who believe that they have the right to this new world, or the world to come, as they call it, which is their new Eden, which is the new Zion, and all of this greater Israel madness. This is all true. We've been researching this for myself, well over a decade. Many people like David, over 4 decades. There's enough there to be convinced that there's a lot of truth to this, if not entirely true. The sigil of Saturn, and we've seen this before, the Balmoral crest, the sigil of Saturn in the middle there, which is intertwined into the square and compass of Freemasonry. Obviously, Balmoral will be Baal. Last week we looked at Baal being a title, such as Christ is. So you could have Baal, Moloch, and even Moloch is said to be possibly a title from someone in the comments as well. So they're clearly, in my opinion, both representations of Saturn, which is death. Here you go, Thelema, Freemasonry, Satanism, and Luciferianism. We did this one last week, but look at all of them. Sigil of Saturn, square and compass, everything is in there. They're telling you in their signs and symbols. And then we, of course, have the eugenics X Club of today, which is Elon Musk's X. And he's even showing you there. That's one side. It's the left-hand path of Freemasonry. Right-hand path, left-hand path. That's exactly what it is. and they both lead to the same ends. Thomas Huxley's X-Club Royal Society members today, remember both of those guys before, are members of the Royal Society, and they would both be, in my opinion, fairly high-level Freemasons. We saw another guy on Donald Trump's inauguration doing the whole Freemasonic hand in his top like that, which is the hidden hand. They're everywhere. So this is what it's all about. It's about the Abrahamic covenant. And I try not to come back to Solomon's temple every week, but I just keep ending up there, because that's where these lunatics want to go. The Covenant of Parts is one of the most important events in Jewish history. It's not history, it's the story. In the covenant, God told Abraham, a Brahmin, about the destiny of his descendants. They would be strangers in a land where they would become oppressed and enslaved. Ultimately, however, God would redeem them, and they would inherit the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, which they've taken over already. But they're not just stopping there, are they? They're going for this Greater Israel project, which seems to be the re-establishment of King Ramses II, as CJB Books, Christopher John Biotis talks about, his kingdom. There are two parts to the Abrahamic covenant. Abraham's descendants, also known as the Hebrews, the Israelites, or the Jewish people, which doesn't include all the Jewish people. This is a faith. They all believe slightly different things depending on what faction you subscribe to. They would be enslaved and eventually redeemed. It's the hero's journey, isn't it? And the number two would be they would forever inherit the land of Canaan, or the whole bloody Greater Israel by the looks of it. That's what they want. And some of Greenland and the North Pole, if we are to believe what's going on there. The first half of the promise was fulfilled when the children of Israel were subjugated in the land of Egypt. They were thrown out of Canaan by the looks of it because of some of their beliefs. The second half was mostly fulfilled when Joshua conquered and settled most of the land promised to Abraham. Although the Jewish people were later exiled again, it was promised to us as an eternal heritage. They talk about us. It's obviously nonsense, but, let's bear with it. This is from the Chabad website. That's why I keep going back to their website. We hope and pray for that promise to be fulfilled in its entirety when we return to the land with its extended borders. There you go. With its extended borders. It's from the Chabad website itself. With its extended borders. So they've gone in one, we would inherit the land of Canaan and a bit more. They just add bits on, literally annex everything down there. And it wasn't promised to Abraham. Not even the extended borders bit wasn't. They've added that on it. And none of it was anyway, obviously, because it's all a load of nonsense. But, with the coming of the Moshiach speedily in our days, it's all about this messianic nonsense. The message of the covenant. The essential message of the covenant is that Jewish people will face harsh and trying times, don't we all? But at the end of it all, the Jews will remain steadfast and strong. Again, Jewish is a faith. The covenant is God's promise that the Jewish people will inherit the entire land of Israel. Let us pray that this will be fulfilled with the coming of the Moshiach, or the Messiah, speedily in our days. So they want to pray that basically it happens before, I would say, 2000 was one that the Freemasons appeared to believe, but they missed it. So they're in panic now. That's why we had 9/11, Sigil of Saturn and the Gate of Apollo and all that symbology. 2240 seems to be the year that many researchers have kind of come up with. But, any time within that time they want to get this done, the quicker the better. This is what Donald Trump believes. This is what Donald Trump is saturated in and has been all his life. Same with Putin, same with Malay, same with Zelensky, same with RFK. And now even today we had Russell Brand giving Shmuley a little hug and saying how much he loves RFK. It's just pathetic, really. So this is the convenial society. The relationship between technology and narrative is long-standing. Indeed, some have argued that is at the heart of human civilization. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up at the end here was because this is all narrative. We are narrative storytelling beings. I am telling you a story now. Doesn't mean it's not true, but I'm telling you in a way that paints pictures in your mind. We are all storytelling beings. That's how we navigate the world. So what they've done is constructed their own stories, but what they've actually done is given you the end of the story as if it's written in stone and cannot be gotten away from, which is total lunacy. That means that you have no control over your future, and this is all going to be when clearly these people are making it come about. They've reframed this story as inevitable when they are making it happen, and nothing's inevitable. Because they can't stand chaos, because they're terrified of chaos, so they need to create their own order. They see us as chaos, the firstborn. The relationship between technology and narrative is long-standing. Indeed, some have argued that it is at the heart of human civilization. It was once fashionable to characterize human beings as tool-using animals, although this turned out to be the best way of getting at whatever might be distinctly human. It has also been suggested that we understand human beings as storytelling animals. Technology theorist N. Catherine Howes has implicitly argued for a synthesis of these two positions by framing narratives as a technology for making meaning. And it is a technology. That's the technology that they've always used. It's the technology of the mind, the storytelling technology, the Hansel and Gretel, as we spoke about earlier, the breadcrumbs, this redeem story, this hero's journey. These are all narratives. It's a technology that they are using, and the technology and the story narrative that they're using is AI is inevitable. Therefore, it becomes a self-fulfilling story, prophecy. But it doesn't actually happen unless we go along with it. They're trying to tell you that it's already been done. It has been written. Haley's argued that the primary purpose of narrative is to search for meaning, thus making narrative an essential technology for human beings who, she claims, can arguably be defined as meaning-seeking animals. The fact that they keep saying animals here, again, is a eugenics, anti-human term there to dehumanize us. So it's all wrapped up in there. So part of the narrative that she's selling, the story she's selling, is that we are animals that can tell stories. It's just, nonsense. But the fact is that the story part of it is obviously very much true. We paint pictures in each other's minds through stories and narratives. That's exactly how we do everything, and we navigate this world. And they're trying to use the technology of storytelling to convince you that you're doomed from the start, and not only that, you are a sinner. So that's worth the read, and it's really important stuff to understand that. This is another, the Convenial Society. If you go see this guy, he's on Substack, worth checking out his Substack there. This is where I got this from. There is absolutely no inevitability as long as there is a willingness to contemplate what is happening. So it's not inevitable because you can change it. We can change this. It's not inevitable. By telling you what their narrative is and the end of their story is, we have the opportunity to change this by not going along with it. They can only write the script. We need to act it out. They're making people act it out on their behalf for their own purposes and their own evil. We don't have to act this out. None of us do. Because we're the storytellers. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you can, the idea is to empower ourselves to show that none of this is inevitable. We have the power here. They're trying to make us fulfill their story. Let's not do that. So one of the things that you guys have been asking me to look into for a while, I'm no expert on this, but this guy it's the Tartaria or Tartarian theory, the mud floods. It's absolutely fascinating. So this guy Anderson, is coming on to the show now to talk about his book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. This is an absolutely fantastic book, and it's such an easy read, and it was like a breath of fresh air for me to not look into Chabad Lubavitch all the time and talk about something that I learned something that I'd never looked into before. It's absolutely fascinating. It'll make you look at the world in many different ways. Remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and I will see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye. Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified here on Ickonic.com. I'm here with a new guest, Guy Anderson. Now, this is a subject that you've been asking me to look into, and I've only just started to scratch the surface, literally, with this. Guy has written a fantastic book. It's called Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. As someone who grew up in the 80s, the Cabbage Patch Kids means one thing to me, but means a different context here. Guy is a lovely man. This book is absolutely fascinating. This topic is absolutely fascinating. Only about an hour ago, I was watching a video of another guy that has found some tunnels underground, and you can see trains going underneath their feet and stairwells through these rocks. This whole world that we believe on the surface is completely different, and that includes possibly our history. So, Guy, welcome to the platform.
Thank you very much for having me on, Richard.
Absolute pleasure. So, my first question is going to be Tesla. We know the Tesla.
Mm.
Why the Cabbage Patch Kids?
Well, the Cabbage Patch Kids, for me, if anybody knows a little bit about them, then they're not going to instantly think of the dolls. Unfortunately, most people will just think of the doll that became really popular, but it's a lot darker and more sinister than that. And the reason for the title, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids, is I wanted to connect Nikola Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Babies, which was a series of postcards that came out that were also known as repopulation postcards.
Wow.
Yeah, late 1700s, early eight. Sorry, beg your pardon, late 1800s, early 1900s. Um, I wanted to link those two to Tartaria because the book is really focused around the Empire of Tartaria, which again a lot of people won't know much about. And in order for them to collapse a very advanced civilization using what we would refer to as Atlantean technology. They introduced a series of inventions patented by Nikola Tesla and then repopulated the planet using a process known as, or a program known as the Cabbage Patch Babies. And if I had just called the book Tartaria, there are a few of them out there, but I wanted to give people something they would recognize and then join a few dots together for them. So I'm hoping that people wouldn't instantly look at the book and think, oh, it must be about the car and those toys. But people who know a little bit about Tartaria would then be able to perhaps fill a few gaps in what they are unaware of what actually happened. You can't just collapse an empire and make it disappear along with its people. There was a series of events that happened before and after that to get civilization up and running again. So that's the connection. But I can expand on the Cabbage Patch if you want me to.
Well, I think we'll go through because there's so much to cover in this, and we'll get you back on to speak about the Cabbage Patch guys. I think because that's fascinating, and I actually didn't know that at all. So that's fascinating as a rabbit hole for me to go down. Um, but you said the collapse of the society before and after, and we know
Mm.
there's elements popping through that things that don't make sense, like Donald Trump's uncle finding Tesla's papers in his hotel. Apparently, I mean, what is the chances of that? Don and Baron Trump having this book out about him going through portals and the underworld and this Kabbalah kind of sense to it. There's clearly something else, another language going on there. They're hiding something with. Now, I've seen a few places, I think, especially one in Derby up on the hills there that looks like it might be a Tatarian building that was funded, run off of free energy. There's definitely some around here in the north that I would say all seem to be glass like buildings. Now, so I'm not completely like obscure to this understanding that this technology was there. So let's go back to when they started to collapse this society that you say is Tataria, and that does appear on maps, by the way, guys. So this isn't something that's just plucked out of thin air.
Yeah. So the Tartarian Empire, a lot of people leaning towards religion more so would refer to this period of time as 1,000 years that the Tartarian Empire was really at its prime. They refer to it as the millennial reign of Christ. They're saying it's 1,000 years of peace, harmony, living in balance with the planet, and building with perhaps a far better understanding of how to build. If you're going to, let's say, for example, if you're going to destroy a woodland, and build something huge there, then whatever you build needs to still be in balance and harmony with what's around it. So they used a method called cymatics, and by building using cymatics and sacred geometry, they're able to get everything that's within the walls of what they've built to resonate at the frequency of all living matter, and that sense that creates a sense of well-being and euphoria, and that same philosophy and technique of building was introduced into what we today call cathedrals, which in Tartarian times were centers of energy and healing, and cathedral coming from cathode rao, something that actually generated and stored energy, ultimately electricity. And with crystal windows rather than stained glass, and pipe organs, specifically called organs because at the right frequency they actually balanced your internal organs. You
Yeah.
would go in there with an ailment, or even just regularly to stay, I suppose, what we would say today, balancing your chakras. That they were building doing this, and so the whole Tartarian ethos was centered around personal growth and development and well-being, a healthy um, a healthy culture, and a healthy civilization where everybody lived in harmony and balance. But it had to come to an end, and there was no, obviously, with the what I refer to as the parasites. There was a point where they were on the verge of the Industrial Revolution, and we were going to be moving towards um, coal coal powered and gas powered, ultimately um, saleable and profitable forms of energy. So the Tartarians, who were masters using Atlantean technology of harnessing energy from the ether, which they did through these buildings, there was no money to be made. So it boils down to certain families with influence, and in America it was Rockefeller getting um, electric vehicles, for example, outlawed. He actually got them banned,
Right.
because he was very heavily involved with Henry Ford, and obviously as well with the oil industry. So the Tartarian theory of free world travel, um, working in harmony and balance with the ether, and understanding cymatics and the frequency that all living matter works on. Um, there was no money. There was no money in that. So after 1,000 years, a series of events took place, and these equate to what we would call civil wars, and the Napoleonic Wars. The technology that the Tartarians worked with was very much harnessing energy from the ether, which was what Nikola Tesla went on to try and pioneer. However, I do question whether Nikola Tesla actually did exist. There are only a few photographs of him in circulation, so and no video footage of him, whereas there is for Thomas Edison
Yeah.
and Albert Einstein. So I sometimes wonder whether or not all of the inventions credited to Tesla were Tartarian, and they clumped them all
Yeah.
under one person. A little bit like they claim was true of Shakespeare and his works, that they were done by a committee and credited with one person. So you create a story. Um, so the whole Tartarian Empire was based upon free energy, free travel, health, well-being, raising your vibration and frequency, and living in harmony. But today we would know the Tartarian Empire as the Mongolian Empire. They have been
Right.
completely removed. But you can trace the Tartarians back. They say that King Solomon was one of its most famous rulers, and as was Genghis Khan.
That's really interesting with the Solomon. Obviously, we have a very much a Freemasonic kind of element to that as well, and we have they're obsessed with it. You have Chabad Lubavitch guys obsessed with Solomon's temple, so that kind of whole understanding of what the temple actually was, the Kabbalistic energy as well, and what you're talking about there. I mean, I'd like to get into that actually, how that all intertwines. What what you're talking about. Like there's little signs, like the song Hallelujah. The lines in that song are always like, what was that about? They said there's a sacred chord, and it's the sacred chord would mean to me, and it always meant to me, this vibrational healing sound. And it was always, that's why you say hallelujah at these places. And there was a kind of an element there of, there's this telling you something, that there's a healing sound here. Gareth White once wrote a song called Red Brick Heart. And he just wrote it, as far as I know, about a place in Scotland, I think, or Wales that he loves. But the red bricks also, I looked into, vibrate at a certain, give off a certain healing or vibrational quality. And he didn't know that, apparently. So I was telling him, look, there's something more to this that you maybe have intuitively understood and not logically understood, because these red bricks are supposed to actually, and that's all these old workhouses were built like that. So, but we're looking at castles and things like that, and
Mm.
there are places, as I said at the start, that seem to have this architecture. Why would, and you asked this question in there, which is a very valid question, why would these different places from around the world have this Greco-Roman architecture everywhere? Why is you can clearly see Washington DC is based on Rome,
Yeah,
Maryland. It was called once as well,
yeah.
by a bloke called John Pope. I'm not even, or Francis Pope. I think it's John Pope gave them the land. So there's clearly an element of this understanding that they're hiding. But that's really, really, really fascinating what you're saying. So when did this start to fall, this empire? Was it around the late 1700s?
Yes, it was
Yep.
1776, which was the start. If you look on the back of an American dollar bill, the start of New World Order. There on the back with the all-seeing eye, and the pyramid is New World Order in Latin and 1776 in Roman numerals, and that was the beginning of what religious people claim to be Santa's little season, a
Right.
250-year period where these organizations, families, whatever we want to call them, the Illuminati, the Cabal, are allowed, and I don't know how they're allowed or who's allowing this, but they're given a 250-year period where they can literally destroy everything, and they can make as much money as they desire. They can cause devastation, death, depopulation, whatever they want to do. They've got this short reign of 250 years, which in theory would be over next year,
Right.
2026. That their time would be up. So some people say that it's going to really ramp up with, we've seen obviously the outbreak we had in 2020, and the installation of 5G and
Hmm.
certain other things happening, the 15-minute cities and so on. And it looks like that they are increasing everything, especially with what's going on in LA right now. They're really ramping things up because their time is supposedly going to be over after 250 years. So we'll just have to, I suppose, see what happens. But the from 1776 there were a lot of civil wars. Perhaps the Napoleonic would be one of the bigger examples, and also something that happened called the Comet of 1811. Now, there are images of that you can find online, well, the odd painting, but a few drawings. And to me, what I'm looking at is direct energy weapons.
Right.
So a lot of destruction. They had almost every, and this is something that you can check on Google or Wikipedia. From 1776 onwards, over about the next 100 years, every major town and city in the world had a fire, with some of the largest and oldest and most significant buildings, the ones that I would say look Greco-Roman, burnt down. Um, Through war, famine, and genocide, we lost a vast chunk of the population as well. So they'd almost destroyed everything they needed to. But it's something that's a slight side issue, going back to what you mentioned earlier with Gareth and red brick. Red brick can also store energy. It's the same chemical reaction that creates rust. So there's a bit more going on with red brick. And if you, and a lot of old jails across the world, which we'd now call prisons, and a lot of older buildings, you will see a red brick, and then they'll often have a series of white brick. So majority red brick and the odd line, like a licorice all sort,
Yeah,
but predominantly red. And they were to show people that these buildings were centres of energy, that they were actually harnessing and storing energy like a large battery.
that's what I
Power
think I
stations.
was alluring is not the right word. That's what I was kind of like implying. I knew
Mm,
there was an energy element, so I think that's exactly
mm.
what I was thinking of. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, the energy storing, absolutely. I think that's exactly what I've read into, but obviously forgot the details. But yeah, fascinating,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Old prisons as well. You'll see a lot of old prisons, red brick with the occasional row of white brick. And the interesting thing with prisons is that if you think about the process, that you are charged and then placed in a cell.
Mm,
What, by anyone's measurement, really, that's someone referring to a battery.
yeah.
And also with military terminology as well, we'll often use the term battery. Group of soldiers or an armament of some description, a battery. And I think that this is people with a very low vibration, the people that are really at the root of all of the secret societies and the groups out there, the think tanks and so on. Ultimately, the people they report to, I believe, that descend from um, the 13 bloodline families, I think they're very low vibrational and they feed off our energy. And I think that they've been doing that for a very, very long time.
So they store this energy. So if you had a prison like that and it was stored for people, obviously low in energy because they're going to jail for a certain amount of time, that's
Mm,
going to store within the building itself. So when you're going in there, you're just, instead of doing the you're not going in there to be kind of like rehabilitated. You're actually going
no, you're
into
not.
a building that's only going to enhance that. So you're sending
Mm,
criminals out on the street that have gone in as criminals and going to come out as even more negatively charged because of the buildings
yeah,
holding that in itself. That is that makes total sense to me if you were a lunatic. But yeah, that makes total sense to me, and I know that these guys believe in this stuff. And as we were saying at the start, there's maps with the Tatarian Empire
mm,
on it. So you say in your book, and it's one of the most fascinating things is how they repurpose many of these buildings that we see
yeah.
around us. So, is it hidden in plain sight? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, but there are certain things that they've done. So, for example, first of all, you mentioned a Tartarian building earlier on. The White House.
Hmm.
But the Tartarians weren't just a race of people. There were lots of people within that. So it was more of a period of time. I suppose, for example, you would have lots of different cultures within the Roman Empire that fell into that category. Um, in America, it was the Moors. The Moors were the people that were really the forefathers that built all of this amazing architecture. But it was all under the umbrella of the Tartarian period of time. So it wasn't just a group of people. Tartaria is a place. It was Asia and Russia predominantly, and then it spread out. And that's why you could look at, say, for example, South America. If you looked at Costa Rica, Rio de Janeiro, you will see Greco-Roman buildings there too. The same in Samoa, Tasmania, places that could not possibly have, at the time that these places were built, have travelled and seen this stuff. And you can pick apart a lot of the stories too. So, for example, with the first government building in Sydney, they give credit to a particular person for being the architect, but when you dig into it a little bit further, you find out that the person they're talking about was actually, when the building was built, was still on his way by ship as a convict to Australia before it was erected. So, sorry, yeah, before they actually, that they're physically building this place, and he isn't even there at this point. So sometimes their backstory falls apart, and they'll often clump a lot of buildings to one person, which is my thinking with Nikola Tesla, that you can you can round a few things up and say, okay, well, let's just say that this one person who did design this particular building, let's give him those ones as well, and that's dealt with. But they get it wrong quite a bit. I found buildings where the person that was claimed to have been the architect was either not born or an infant at the time it was constructed. So they do. You can pick these stories apart, but those buildings, they appear throughout the world. They're absolutely everywhere in places that make no logical sense.
I wonder if Tesla is then an example that we're theorizing here is almost like a brand of the person who's chosen to be the genius of the next generation type thing. So they're putting it obviously on Elon Musk now, who's clearly not a genius in any way, shape, or form, but they kind of find someone to hold up in the future as someone who's a game changer. I wonder if Tesla, if we could find the root of that word, maybe it's an anagram or something, that possibly that's a brand as opposed
Well,
to a
it's an
person.
anagram of steal.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, as in theft. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is interesting. I've been shot down a few times for questioning whether or not he existed, and I've never said he doesn't exist. All I've ever said is I don't know if he existed or not. And I've asked everybody that's challenged me, and I get things wrong, and I'm still learning, and I'm happy to be corrected, providing someone can give me something that I can print. Um, and I've been asking people for a very long time, if he did exist, let's just say he did, and this is a pioneer at the forefront of technology, considered a genius by Einstein, apparently. Why is there no video footage of him? Because there is of Edison and Einstein. There's not a single piece of video footage. And I was referred to his university, sorry, his museum in Eastern Europe, the museum that's been dedicated to him. Go onto their website, and you'll find everything you're looking for. There's nothing on there. I contacted them. They have nothing. They've never seen anything. There isn't any video footage of this man. Now, if he's a pioneer of technology, I would have thought he would have been one of the first people to be filmed, because apparently he gave a lot of talks. He was in a lot of magazines. I was told by a couple of people that perhaps he was shy. Well, this is a person that spoke allegedly at public events in front of hundreds of people. I don't think he was shy. You mentioned earlier on that it's quite interesting that Tesla, his hotel room is broken into,
Hmm.
and just after he died, well, within moments of his death, his hotel room is broken into by a renowned lockpicker that worked with the FBI. John Trump goes in with the lockpicker and somebody who worked at the hotel, retrieves all of the files and paperwork. Well, that's a strange one, because apparently he never wrote anything down, because he had a photographic memory, and everything came to him in visions, so detailed that he never even had to test anything. Every experiment he ever did worked exactly how his dream suggested it would. So what did they uncover, and why, if they did recover these files, why did John Trump hand over every single file to the FBI apart from three, which were on time travel?
Right.
Now, I find that fascinating. And now you throw in the adventures of Baron Trump, which you
Exactly. Yep.
mentioned earlier. And now let's look at Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk is what we would call, I suppose, today, in theory, as far as the public are concerned, he is the equivalent of Nikola Tesla. Um, if anyone's going to crack time travel, we would assume it would be him. Well, if John Trump handed the files to Donald, or if John and Donald are the same person, then right now I would imagine if Elon Musk is who we are told he is, they would be sat with him.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much to Musk in terms of his Kabbalistic understanding of some of those principles. I mean, he's the Iron Man, obviously, which is
Hmm.
the, I mean, that's Mars. Iron is the element of Mars in terms of the Kabbalistic understanding. So you have all of that kind of, so he's Mars Man, basically.
Yeah,
So, and obviously he was written about in, Elon was the character in Von Braun's book, if Von Braun ever existed. Um, in Von Braun's book, of the guy who took humans to Mars once it's been colonized. So he's obviously been either brainwashed to think he is that character, or he is, as you say, there's so much more going on here. If, in terms, and I've talked about the FBI raiding Tesla's room and that, but I mean, what a ruse that would be if that never actually happened, to cement someone that's happened, make up false things that happen in their life that never actually happened anyway because they never existed. It's an absolutely amazing situation to look into. I think people would be asking, I want to come back to Tesla later on, but something I don't want to forget is, so 7076, it seemed to be a reset, but there's obviously the type of building that we would say that could possibly come into the Tatarian technology. But what would you say of things that go back, apparently, again, thousands of years towards like the Egyptian pyramids and all of these pyramids buildings? Would they come under the same thing, or are we looking at a number of resets through the years, but carrying
yeah,
on that um, that knowledge from the Snake Brotherhoods that I would say has passed through the Freemasons, and it's all played Platonic elements, and it's the fifth element is the ether. So are we looking at different stages using the same understandings but resets along the way?
yeah, yeah. You hit the nail on the head. In fact, that's probably one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of it. That's exactly right. These resets take place quite a lot, and we have great resets, and we
Yeah.
know that obviously the World Economic Forum have been talking about the Great Reset going on now for some time, and the need for a Great Reset due to man-made global warming and overpopulation, which I don't believe in either of those things. Um, but yes, I mean the technology that the Tartarians are using, a lot of people refer to that as Atlantean, the ability to harness energy from the ether, and that also would be what we would see the pyramids as doing. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the pyramids were actually harnessing energy, um, and but of course you would then ask, well, what were they powering with that energy? But there are hieroglyphs of huge light bulbs, and I think this has been suppressed. There's also something worth looking at called the Baghdad battery. Have you've seen that? Yeah, I don't know if people are aware of it, but this is 2,000 years old, and it does carry a charge. I think between 6 and 9 volts, and you can link them to create a higher charge. So this technology, I think, has been around for a very, very long time, and I don't know where you are, but on this, but I'm sort of 90% towards believing that we were created by a race of superior beings, perhaps known as the Anunnaki, um, and that if they had the technology to build and what they built and create us, then this technology that we have today is nothing in comparison to what was out there. And I believe the descendants of the Anunnaki and Amun Ra, or Marduk, whatever you want to call him, Amun Ra said he was going to leave everything behind to his children, to the Ra childs. And you don't have to be Einstein to work out who the Ra childs are. I mean, he called
Mm.
them the Ra Khan, but it translates to Ra childs. I think that there are people out there that can trace their ancestry back, right the way back to people like Gilgamesh and Solomon, and that they have still got this technology. And I think a lot of it's been used for military applications by the deep state. And what we get hundreds of years after it's been perfected is a very much watered down version. So just take, for example, the iPhone. I mean, I would love to know what the military, the deep state, right at the darkest level, what
Mm.
sort of phone do they have? What sort of technology do they have? How long before um, we get it in the public domain have they had it? So I think things are suppressed heavily, and so Antiquitech or Atlantean technology, Tartarian technology, call it whatever you want, it goes back hundreds of thousands of years ago.
It's fascinating what you're saying about the Rothschilds there, because there's two kind of, because when you come at this and you hear different information and this other information comes in, your natural instinct is to go dismiss it because
Mm,
it reframes you. So I know that one of the things I looked into is that the Rothschilds were once called, or the Bacharach family, but that wouldn't mean that these Bacharach families wouldn't try and take on the persona and the name of the Rothschild, Ra's child, because they are claiming, like Jacob did with Esau in the Bible, claiming the inheritance of someone else. So when you start to be a real investigator into these things, you don't just dismiss it. You go, okay, that could be true, but these guys, we know they pretend to be something that they are not.
mhm.
So if these guys aren't really the Rothschild and we are, they would just steal it anyway, call themselves that, and keep the knowledge that they stole it hidden from us. So you see what I mean? So we kind of got to
Absolutely.
unpick it
Yeah.
together and go, they're not going to tell us the truth. That's the only truth we know. They're going to lie every time. So we'll discard that. But what is the truth there? Well, we know that the elements coming through the centuries that these guys take on the birthright of something else, and it's ours. This knowledge is ours. This is
Yes.
knowledge that came out of the mystery schools and goes through like the Knights Templar and the upper levels of the Freemasons and this guys. And I know you were in the Masons yourself. You only went to like the third degree, I believe.
Yeah.
But
I
I've
don't
got
think I'm
family.
allowed back now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we all know that the third degree is one, two, and three, and anything, even the Royal Arch at the fourth degree, are not going that far. I had family members way back that were in the Freemasons, so that doesn't really say much at all. But that information at the very top seems to be Platonic, and it seems to go back to the understandings that these mystery schools had of how reality works and the fact
Mm.
that energy is free and we have this kind of hive mind of intelligence in terms of being able to understand this stuff. So when something just feels right and you go, oh, that makes sense, that's it. And it's that moment when you just went before, you said cells and batteries. People are, oh, it's prison cells, and you get charged with something. That makes sense. Yes, because that is right. It's that feeling in you you've been told to to disregard with not with thinking, as opposed to just going, that seems right now, I'm going to go and see if I can find any evidence to see if it's right or wrong. You disregard it because you've been told to get rid of that innate feeling, which is what they want. They don't have. These guys who are pretending to be the Rothschilds or the Red Shields or the Ra's child, they don't have that innate feeling there. And that's written all through the Gnostics, all through the reptilian understanding of possibly things that they don't have this innate ability to create, but we do,
No, or love. I don't
or
believe they
love.
can love. I don't think they know. And I think that's probably one of the uses we've had for them because I don't think any of the art, the music, and the architecture could be achieved without us. I don't
Yes,
think they have anything in them. They're very low vibration and a sort of, I suppose, demonic in
that's
a
a really
sense.
good point, actually, guys. That all this music that they're getting used, the demonic music or films in the industry and in Hollywood industry, they're resetting that as well, if you've
Yeah.
noticed, by burning it down, which was Hollywood was built on a place called Holywood in Rome, around a place called Nemi, which was Diana's lake, and they used to sacrifice people in there to make them immortal, which means stars, become a star, immortal star. So all the same ritual. They're getting rid of that and resetting that now, which you've just pointed out. So this reset includes Hollywood as well. But
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to create any of those dark, horrible things because they don't have that creative ability. So they're using the Spielbergs, which is not his real name, in my opinion. That means big lie. Spielberg means big lie. You think George Lucas is actually his real name? George Light, Lucas, Lucifer. It's George Lucifer. I
Mm.
don't believe these are real. You know what I mean? I do believe they're talented people,
Yeah.
but they're playing characters, as you've just said earlier on. Maybe Tesla is a character role
I
to
believe so.
fill. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned George Lucas because I totally agree with what you just said, and of course if you look at Star Wars, the
Mm.
story of Luke Skywalker is no different to the story of Jesus,
Yep.
the story of King Arthur pulling the sword, the
Yes.
Excalibur, and now Harry Potter. They use the movie industry to get the same story across to us. And I think George Lucas perhaps was the first person to really do it well, if he ever existed or whoever he is.
Mm.
Um, but they also claim that when I say they, I'm talking about people that I chat to online and on Facebook and Telegram and so on. That the Harry Potter books were not written by J.K. Rowling.
Mhm.
That actually they were written by somebody else or a group of people. They're taken from other older stories, and the same with William Shakespeare, and the same with the works of Leonardo da Vinci. That was a family. That wasn't one particular person.
Right.
So I think that they get the message out there and use the media to do it. And I guess they're working on universal law or karma, where they're showing us what they're doing. They're showing us the truth, but in a way we dismiss it as fiction.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. With the whole COVID thing, it was your compliance. It was your what would you call it? Tacit compliance is opposed. It's not the same as going along with something knowingly, and they've got the two that doesn't count, and they want that tacit compliance.
Yeah,
We've told you, but you don't understand. That's not the way it works. A contract is null and void if you don't specifically understand and be shown to understand the small print. That's not how compliance works. You both have to come at it at an equal level of understanding, and they've got that. They've tried to twist that with these groups, and that doesn't work. But that's I agree with you. That's their whole kind of vampire needs to be let in through the door.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's the
yeah.
same, and they're all bloody related to the vampires apparently. Anyway, so there's absolutely
Yeah,
fascinating
Charles admits
subjects.
it, doesn't he? Charles
He loves
actually
it.
says that I'm a descendant from Vlad the Impaler. I mean, he's
Yep.
quite upfront about it, almost proud of it. But he would be. It would make perfect sense. That's of course if he is who we think he is. I've got other views on. I
Yeah,
think he's long
exactly.
gone, and that's somebody else that we're looking at.
Right.
But
Wouldn't surprise me, but obviously, yeah, Vlad the Impaler, who was a initiate of the dragon. I think it was the
yeah,
dragons. What's it called? The dragons. Sort of secret society called the Dragons something I can never remember. But him and his son. So it was Vlad the Impaler, which was Dracula, but then there was his father as well. Um, so they were both in this dragon sect, which would mean obviously you see the symbolism in London all over the place.
yeah, yes,
Um,
you do.
yeah,
And
go
someone I
on.
was talking to, yeah, literally talking to this morning, is currently out in he's out in Costa Rica. He's on a bit of a holiday and a bit of a travel sightseeing, and he went to somewhere that looks very similar to the White House or to the Vatican or St Paul's. Very similar looking building. Still has a very shiny copper roof, so
Right.
it's more than capable of receiving energy through the ether. Whether or
That's
not
really interesting.
there's something going on in there, I don't know. But he went inside and he started to find. First of all, he found a flag that was up on the rooftop, of which is the flag that we know to be the Tartarian flag, and lots of carvings of dragons. And these dragons we see everywhere, absolutely everywhere. When I started researching Tartaria, I see dragon after dragon after dragon, monuments, carvings, paintings, depictions. These dragons appear absolutely everywhere.
That's fascinating what you said about copper. So copper, am I right in saying when it oxidizes from gold, it'll go green? Am I right?
Well,
Is that
it
like a
naturally
teal
tarnishes.
color?
Yeah, but that's sort of it tarnishes, but to make it go green quickly, so it no longer works,
Right.
horse
Okay.
urine was used.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So by coating them in horse urine, they tarnished them, and once they're green, they can no longer actually work. They can't function correctly.
No. That's
And
fascinating because the Statue of Liberty was gold, which I believe is Shekinah. Also, it's Semiramis
yes,
and
of course,
Isis, but it was
yes,
gold first, and now it's this teal kind of Peter teal,
yeah,
kind of greeny blue, which is protective of this. The Kabbalists think that this color protects them. So it's very fascinating that they were gold originally, and they've gone this color, and it's done by that over time.
yeah. So yeah, naturally over time it would tarnish and go
Mm.
green, copperized.
Yeah.
But to speed that process up, horse urine was used on a lot of these buildings.
Oh, Jesus, you've wondered how they found these things out. And we obviously you said about police, obviously being in a cell and being charged, and obviously we call them in the UK coppers. I wonder why we call them coppers. I don't know what we call coppers, but it's good to look into this stuff.
Yeah,
Seems to be, yeah, a lot of them are very much. If you look at the Freemasons, the higher levels, and the going into the courts and into the Knight Temple and the Temple Bar,
mm,
coppers would make sense to me. That there's a
yeah.
nod and a wink.
And I think there's a lot of maritime law being used as
Hmm.
well. And money's another strange one, isn't it? Where we have flow and banks and the fluidity of cash and money. There's a lot of maritime references, and I think we don't know it. I mean, even our names, if we use the Mister in front of your name or mine, that's a military term, and we seem to be um, we seem to be sort of constantly referring to things without fully or using terminology without really fully understanding what it is we're saying, and I think that that's used against us by the system. Um, for example, and in court, I mean, that you've got two options, haven't you, to plead guilty or not guilty? Well, what if you don't agree with either? Where's the option?
Mm.
And having just sworn on a book, which it states inside that only God can judge, then what's the man with the wig and the black dress doing?
Yeah.
So it's all a hypocrisy, isn't it? And I think that we are tricked by a lot of terminology that's used. We're backed into a corner a little bit like when if we're arrested and we're asked when we're given our rights if we understand, and what that actually means is will we stand under
Yeah.
them and accept them as an authoritative figure?
Hmm.
Um, so rather than saying no comment, perhaps we'd be better off saying something like, "I'm sorry, I don't understand."
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think we're tricked a lot,
Yep.
and a lot of the language we use, I think, has been put out there. And we had I think it's referred to as the great vowel shift, where English suddenly changed. And I think a lot of the words that we now use have been put in place specifically to tie us up in knots.
That would make absolute sense. And the judge is obviously, in my opinion, dressed as Kronos at the front there with the big wig on and the big is death, basically. And let's get back to your book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. So 76 seems to be a time, and obviously a lot of people will be going, the Bavarian Illuminati came around at that
Yeah.
time. That seemed to be a time then it kind of they started to try and cover this up. How did they go about covering up the traces of this? It's not civilizations, you say, a generation of understanding, maybe a better way to put
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, kind of an ethos, a period of time, I suppose, would be a better
Yeah,
description. Um, a number of things. First of all, to get obviously they needed to get rid of people, and the quickest way to do that is war. And so we had civil wars, and I believe that the civil wars were people who would not comply to New World Order. They would not comply, and they ended up literally fighting against each other. Which is pretty much the case today, isn't it? A lot of people going to war have no real understanding of who's behind it and ultimately what the objective really is. So by using civil war, and then we had genocide, forced famine, outbreaks, things like cholera and so on. We used all over the world, forced famines as well. So we get rid of a lot of people that way. Then what's left? A few of the fires and floods, the comet of 1811, we're going to lose a few there. Then the Lunacy Act comes out. They introduce the Lunacy Act. And without being sexist, and I'm not woke by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's fair to say that the majority of people fighting in the civil wars were men. Now, if you died at war, your wife is left with the children, so you have a widow at home with your children. Losing your husband in battle automatically made you a lunatic. It was one of the laws. To lose your husband in battle or to be a widow basically meant that you were considered a lunatic. You were incapable of looking after those children and bringing them up on your own. Reading too much, falling off a horse, being overeducated, having women's problems every month, all of these things classed you as a lunatic. So
That's really
And it look,
fascinating, guy. Because in the sense of these bad guys and these guys that believe in the Kabbalah, and you look at the front of Solomon's temple, the left path is the female aspect, the Shekinah aspect, and that's seen as the evil, the bad side. So
mm,
that would make sense because she represents the moon, the sun, obviously is the
yes,
male, and the moon. So it all ties into the same. The moon,
Luna, yeah,
lunatic. Yeah. So
yeah,
just wanted to put that in there because
yeah.
these things trace across all these different beliefs that seem to be vying against each other for their place in their new world at the moment. But yeah, it all fits in perfectly.
So with the Lunacy Act, um, you then had a large, and you'll also see if people read the book or do a bit of digging online that around the same time, all across the world, we not only have asylums open, and these are some magnificent buildings. If you look, for example, of at Bedlam, um, if you look at the first building and look at Strangeways in Manchester. Um, any of the old jails around and prisons around the world. These are incredible buildings. These are not what you would not construct something like this. That again, usually red and white brick, but we're talking marble granite, incredible works of art. The chapel, for example, in which prison is it? It's a prison in London. It's gone. It will come back to me in a moment. Um, the most famous prison in London, and the name's completely gone. It has a chapel in there that is something.
Belmarsh.
No, not
It's not.
Belmarsh.
Where's Belmarsh? I don't know where Belmarsh is.
Um, it'll come back to me.
It'll come back. Yeah.
Um, I hate it when I do that. My
It's all right.
brain
It
just
happens to me
suddenly
all the time because you've got so
disappears
much
somewhere.
going on and you lose
Yeah,
this little link. Yeah, but
it
the
just
most famous
goes.
prison in it'll come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it'll come back. So if you look at these, you had prisons, asylums, and orphanages open up all over the world overnight. There was one, incidentally, the one in New Zealand that opened up called Dundin, Dunedin. That, within a year of opening, had 70,000 inmates. So what were they doing before? So my as far as I can see, you've got a lot of civil wars taking place. You've got a lot of countries being invaded. We've had war, famine, genocide. Now we're going to pick up the people that are left, and they're either going to be incarcerated for not conforming and complying to the New World Order, or we're going to consider them insane and commit them. Well, then the children become property of the state, and those children were redistributed throughout the world. In America, it was called the orphan trains, and in England, we shipped an awful lot of them to Australia, and that didn't stop until relatively recently. And stories are now coming out. Even indigenous tribes in America, their children were taken, re-educated, and westernized, and their whole history wiped out. So they reset. So the people that were left that would not comply were locked away. So my question would be, if you're going to commit people or incarcerate them, why would you use such a magnificent building to do so and purposely build them?
Yeah.
These are repurposed. So you'll often find with some of these old buildings, they'll either say established, as in the year that they decided what they were going to do with this building now, or they were founded,
Mm,
which a lot of people would say relates to found dead.
yeah. I did. You should. This is something that I know that is going to back up what you just said. Then, and it goes into some very deep Manhattan Project type stuff. Is that Columbia University in the US used to be an insane asylum. There's one building left there now, and within the vaults of that, the former insane asylum, they've repurposed the whole. They say that's one building left, but I kind of agree with you. The whole building was, and it's all been repurposed. It's got that green teal roof, by the way, so that would imply that it had that kind of gold electrically charged roof. Columbia University, and that's also within the vaults of that place, is where they kept a particle accelerator for the Manhattan Project.
Wow. I didn't
So
know
go and
that.
have a look into that because that would make sense. Because if they're doing time travel, atomic weapons, that was used in the Manhattan Project in New Mexico. And you go to New Mexico, you got the Trinity site, and I am certain that there's a whole city underneath New Mexico. There's got the Trinity site, you've got Dulce Base, you've got
Yeah.
Los Alamos National Laboratory, you've got the Roswell incident happened there. Also, you've got Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch, which is there, which I spoke to Jeffrey Epstein victims or survivors, and they said they woke up in some laboratory tables underneath Zorro Ranch. There's something going on under whether they're building a prototype to what they're going to put somewhere else, possibly in Greenland. I believe that they're going to try and repurpose that as possibly some sort of
Yeah. I
like
keep
some
hearing about Greenland.
well, yeah, a guy that I know, Christopher John Burton, talks about that being the new Eden, and maybe they're doing the technology underneath there, but there's certainly something going on underneath. And there's also the Trementina base, which is the Church of Spiritual Technology, which is a facade, front blue, on this massive mountain rock, and underneath are the vaults for the Scientology vaults. Now, L. Ron Hubbard was in with Jack Parsons, the rocket scientists of the Manhattan Project and stuff like that, and atomic weapons, and he was in with Aleister Crowley. So there's all sorts going on.
Oh
So
wow.
when you connect this all back, what you're saying about that being a repurposed buildings being repurposed, I believe Columbia University was a repurposed building, and it definitely was an insane asylum. Not in the late 1700s, I believe. Have a look into that because that
Yeah.
confirms a few things that you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll do that. And it's interesting. A couple of times the the word try appears, and they
Right?
are obsessed with three.
Yep,
The
they are.
Holy Trinity. Well, they're obsessed with three.
Yep.
As they say, Nikola Tesla was. He would walk around the block three times before he went into a building and
Really?
turn his lights on and off three times, lock and unlock the door three times. Everything was three.
Right.
And then we have three to the power of three, nine, 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 nine.
Yep.
And then chuck in the angelic number of 11 and you have 911,
Well, we
which
have
was
Donald
also,
Trump, who's also the 45th and 47th US president, which is 4 and 5 is 9, and 4 and 7, if I'm not mistaken, is 11. He's the
11.
9/11 president.
Yeah.
They are telling you, and then you link that back, don't you, to what you just said before about Trump's uncle, if it wasn't Trump himself, finding Tesla's papers. Because they're working, they believe that they understand the nature of reality, so they work within these numbers and this design of this place.
Yeah.
Now, this information that we're unpicking and gathering was our birthright, in my opinion, not theirs. And they can't create with it unless they use us. So
Yes.
I've kind of recently been saying the lower levels of the, and it's just an example, the Freemasons, but it's the lower levels of everything really, are being used by the upper levels of the Knights Templar who found the secret word of God under the Solomon's Temple, are being used to create the prison that will actually house them, and like in terms of technology. These
Yeah.
Silicon Valley guys are being used and they don't know it. They're not smart enough to understand that they're geeks. They just want to be famous and have girlfriends.
Yeah.
Um, they're being used, and I think we've all been used, and by a very small amount of people. And Trump will know, I think, even though he's been used, bowed out by the Rothschilds. Wilbur Ross was a Jesuit, who bowed him out for the Rothschilds. Um, so he's been used as well, but their degrees of use, literally in the Freemasons. But I, what you're saying, that Columbia thing, I knew there was more to that, but that hits the nail on the head. It's got the right color, building tops. It's which is the Shekinah teal blue, which would
Yeah.
obviously be the original gold, and it was an insane asylum.
Yeah.
It's insane, isn't it? It
Yeah.
literally. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see it a lot. We,
Yeah.
we, we see it a lot. Wormwood Scrubs was the prison.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the prison. And,
They've
and
all
it's
always
well
got
looked
really
into
horrible
chapel.
names, haven't
I
they?
know, I know. Um,
Strange ways. You're like, come
yeah,
on.
Strange Ways has got a tower, a huge tower, which I believe was for airships, for docking
Right.
airships, and it was a Tartarian palace is the wrong word, but a large Tartarian building of sorts. It's never been a lookout tower. They actually state it's not a lookout tower. It's just a tower. Well, what's it for then? Why
So
would you build something like that? But Strange Ways
yeah.
is worth a look.
Well, I went
But
to Australia and I'm sorry, New Zealand, and they have every city that I've been to in terms of big cities have that tower in the middle. It looks like the Eye of Sauron kind of a bit,
yeah,
but with a pokey, spiky bit at the top. And I mean, statue. I'm sorry, the Eiffel Tower. Are we talking about? Would that be included in Tatarian technology? Do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So that would have been originally an airship docking station, as I believe were lighthouses.
Right.
I believe that they served more than one purpose, and a lot of the lighthouses throughout the world actually predate traveling by ship. So to go and build something sometimes quite remotely to the level of detail and also if you think the how difficult in some of these places it would be to construct them, you know, on the edge of a cliff or a rock out at sea, I think that the technology that was used was quite advanced and that they were refueling points and often docking stations. So yes, I think the Eiffel Tower and Blackpool Tower as well.
Mm.
There were a lot of these towers around. They weren't just. I think there was even one in Liverpool, one in Brighton.
This,
They,
yeah.
they they had quite a few of them around, and I think that they were used to dock
And they're still
accordingly.
there now, a lot of them. So why would they keep them? Do you think?
I think some things can be easily destroyed, and some things are kept for lots of different reasons. And I believe, say for example, the Eiffel Tower. Why would you keep that? Well, there is no backstory to it. They just built it. It's a landmark, and now of course, and for certainly the last at least 100 or so years, it's been one of the reasons you would visit Paris. So it's
Mm.
brought a lot of people and ultimately money in. Obviously now we have fiat currency, so they can just sit there and tap a few noughts on their balance, so it wouldn't matter to the economy. But I think that it became a landmark and a reason to go somewhere. But primarily, these things were built for a completely different reason. And so that also brings up the World's Fairs,
Yes.
very similar to the Eiffel Tower. And if you look where the Eiffel Tower is in Paris at the World's Fairs towards the end of the 1800s and then early 1900s, they had more than one in Paris. How Paris looked with if you removed the Eiffel Tower, if you photoshopped that out, you wouldn't recognise the place. It looked more like Venice than Paris. It was absolutely incredible. All built temporarily just to showcase technology to the general public. That's a weak backstory. Some of the World's Fairs in America, they claim that the Columbian Exposition in America, they claimed that a quarter of the population of America attended. One horse and buggy. Where did they stay?
Yeah.
How long would it take to travel thousands of miles in a horse and buggy just to go to a show? It would be like you and I traveling to the Ideal Home exhibition um, in South America on a bicycle. You know, what's going on? So a lot, the World's Fairs is certainly worth looking at with regard to um, with architecture. Every major city had one. And the interesting thing with them is a little bit like the world's, sorry, with Paris, a lot of it's demolished. So at the end of these World's Fairs, um, they'd have a fire. Almost every single one of them had a fire break out.
Right.
Um, and the stories range from a cow knocking over a candle in a cow shed to some homeless people trying to keep warm in a building that wasn't used very often, and the whole World Fair went up. This is St. Louis World's Fair. We're talking about a massive site, a small city, gone. They all burnt down, and what was left is demolished. And they'd keep the odd building here and there. And then they claim that the reason that they were so easily burnt down and why some of them were knocked down or came down so easily is because they were temporary structures made from plaster. Well, if that's the case, why have some of the buildings remained?
Yeah.
it doesn't stack up. The other interesting thing, which goes back to the Cabbage Patch babies and the orphans, is that if you look at photographs, which you can find online of the World's Fairs, you won't see any children in the pictures. All these families that travelled all across their country and all across the world to attend these places, you won't see a single child. All the people that you will see, they all look the same and they all share one thing in common. They don't look like they know why they're there.
Right.
They look out of place. And you'll see that at the same period of time if you see images of them on the sea, at the seafront, on the beach. They don't look like they know why they're there. I'm not saying they're photoshopped, I don't think they are, but I think these people have been moved, they've been
Right.
redistributed, and they've got no idea what's going on, where they are. And a lot of them don't appear to know what a child looks like either.
Right.
And that's a kind of weird, dark place to go, which I'm currently exploring at the moment, actually. Why so many pictures from the same era have no children in them. And also another thing that you can look at to see how the population did decrease dramatically is if anybody wants to do this on the internet, just type in empty streets and then type in a city. They could type in Moscow or St. Petersburg. They're two good examples. Empty streets, early 1900s. And they'll see that almost every photo that pops up, there's no one at all. Now, you could argue that they were taken very early in the morning or late at night. Well, they couldn't be because there was no way of lighting to take the photo back then. These are taken in the daytime, and you won't see birds, you won't see animals, nothing. There's just ghost town, and that appears in a lot of places throughout the world. Just empty streets all around the same period of time. Nobody about anywhere.
It's absolutely fascinating to think that the whole thing can be reframed
Mm,
from these resets and bits and bobs. It's like having a puzzle, but all the bits are in the wrong place, and the picture never made any sense. But you had all the parts, and you just couldn't figure out how it. And it starts to come together. There's so much more I want to chat to you about, and I'm definitely going to get you back on. Let's talk about the Cabbage Patch Kids, and let's talk about time travel because I know you've looked into that and the fact that some very famous people seem to have been appearing through the ages.
yeah,
I mean, I've always been a funny one with time travel because they say, well, it hasn't been invented yet. Well, it's time travel. It doesn't make sense if you if what you tell me. So it'd have to always been invented
yeah,
if it's time travel. That's the
yeah,
point in it. So that doesn't make sense to me, isn't it? It doesn't. What do you mean? It's time
yeah.
travel.
I'm with you
Um,
on that.
so it doesn't make sense. Logic doesn't make sense in that one. But this is an absolutely fascinating book, guys. Go out, head out, and get it. Where can people find your book and connect with you?
Well, I hate to say it, but it's on Amazon. And oddly enough, if you buy that, it comes up as it comes up with the recommendation for your next read as being David's new book. And if you buy David's new book, it comes up as mine as the recommendation
Well,
for your
there you
next read.
go. Then
There's some
see.
synchronicity there.
Great minds think alike. Yeah, it's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic subject. And as we said, we just touched upon the Columbia University fact there. There is some real solid evidence to the fact that something along these lines has happened. And remember, just to do your own research, come to your own conclusions. And we will see you in a week's time. Thank you so much for your time, guy.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.